Hello and welcome to the first part of this tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be having a look specifically at the Extrude tool. Now the final goal of this tutorial is actually to have a modelled crate ready to unwrap, which we're going to cover in the second video. But before we kind of start with the nitty-gritty crate modelling, I thought it would be useful just to give you a general introduction to the Extrude tool and how it can be used. Now, to demonstrate this, I'm just going to use a simple plane. Okay. I'm going to scale this up so we can see it nice and clearly. And I'm just going to move this up so that we can see each of those polygons. Now, this particular plane has got loads and loads of polygons on it. Now, I don't want that number of polygons. So, whenever we start with a plane, the first thing we really want to do is to come across to the attribute editor. Now the attribute editor is basically where all of the information for each of the models that you've created, for each of the primitives that you place, is stored. And this is also the place where we can reduce the number of starting polygons. Now what I'd like to do is click on P-plane 1, and within here we can have a look at some of the translate, rotate and scale options that are available. Within this particular menu we can change the position, we can change the rotation, and we can also change the scale. So if I change this to 20 for instance, you'll see that it nudges a little bit on each side, but it's a very nice way of telling that it's the same size all around. If I have a look on P-plane shape 1, this gives me some general information about the primitive, and again allows me to add some specific detail into some of these more technical menu outlays. We're not going to be looking specifically at that. What we are going to have a look however at is polyplane 1. Now this deals with the actual subdivision width and height. In this instance we're going to tone this just down to 1, and we're going to have a look at how we can extrude using the polygon selection. Next I'm going to click on Modeling Toolkit, as this is where we're going to be creating those extrudes from. Now the first step to extruding is selecting selection type. Now if we hold right click, you'll notice that we get a few options. Edges and faces can both be extruded. We'll start with the face extrude, and then I'll finish off by showing you kind of what edge looks like, and then we'll kind of jump straight into modelling the crate. So first things first, let's have a look at face. Now within face there are two main types of extrude. We have an inset operation. Now that inset operation doesn't include any depth. It essentially just creates a shape within a polygon. So let me demonstrate what I mean by that. I'm going to press Ctrl E on my keyboard. That's going to bring up the extrude option. Now within this menu I have various different options. The first is thickness, and as I increase this you'll notice that I get height. Now when I've only got one polygon selected, local translate Z does a very similar thing. In fact, does exactly the same thing. Offset is going to decrease or increase the width of that particular extrude, and I can go between any one of these and increase these. Now lastly, let's have a look at divisions. Divisions will increase the number of divisions between the starting polygon, which is all the way down here, and the ending polygon. In this instance we're going to keep them as 1, and unless you really know what you're trying to go for, I would always suggest not adding in loads of divisions right away. Try and add that later on when you know what it is you're trying to achieve. To finish an extrude movement we simply press W, and what that will do is it will close the extrude, it will open up the movement tool, and then we are free to move this new geometry about as we want to. So that's how we can create some height. But what if I want to create an indent? What if I want to create a hole here? And I can do that using an inset operation. Now again, I'm going to press Ctrl E on my keyboard, but this time I'm not going to worry about thickness, local translate or divisions. Instead I'm going to increase the offset. Now you'll notice that this creates a square within the square, and this allows us to extrude smaller parts of this shape from the larger shape. So I'm just going to leave this like that. I'm going to press W, But this time instead, if I move this, you'll notice that it kind of creates more of a curve. Before I would move the entire object, but in this instance I'm just left with a bit of a curve. So now that my inset operation is done, I want to extrude now down into this shape. And again, I can do that by pressing Ctrl E, and this time I can reduce that thickness and press W. And this is how we can use Extrude to create pretty much any kind of shape you can imagine. Now if we want to delete polygons, all we need to do is left click on the polygon we want to delete and just press delete. So in this particular instance I've decided that actually I don't want depth here. I'd prefer not to have that. So what I want to do is I want to select each one of these, and I do that by holding shift and clicking multiple faces one by one, and this will select more than one face at a time. Once we're happy that we've selected the correct faces, I'm going to press the delete key on my keyboard, and that will actually get rid of that geometry. But now we're left with a problem. We have a hole in our model. So to fix this, I'm going to select edge, and I'm going to double click this edge. Now double clicking loops. So if I double click any edge, it will loop all the way around until it gets back to itself. And in this particular instance I want to extrude each one of these edges. So what I'm going to do once I've got these edges selected is I'm going to press Ctrl E again. And you'll notice that it works in exactly the same way. So as I increase the thickness, it creates some more geometry. I can also use offset as well to skew, open or closed that geometry. And again, when I'm done, I'm just going to press W. Now in the instance where we have an open face and we need to close it, the easiest option is using the bridge tool. Now the bridge tool is located on the right hand side just underneath Extrude, and this is a great tool for bridging gaps. In order to use it, we select two opposing edges. There needs to be nothing between them. So if there was, say for instance, a vertex here and I had an edge leading all the way up, I wouldn't be able to bridge both of these edges to this one edge. I would only be able to bridge one of those edges, and I can demonstrate this for you now. If I just use cut real quick and I just create a cut here to demonstrate, if I select those edges now, you'll notice that there's not one but two, and if I select one of those edges and its opposing edge and click bridge, you'll notice it only fills half the gap. So just bear that in mind when you're modeling, and you're modeling by yourself. If you do have more than one edge, you are going to have to replicate that geometry on the other side. But this particular example is nice and easy. All I have to do is select the opposing edges and click bridge, and this will close that gap. And again, same as with Extrude, to finish it off I just press W. And that's pretty much everything that we need to know about Extrude. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete this object, and I'm going to do that by holding right click and selecting object mode. I'm going to select the object itself, and I'm going to press delete on my keyboard. In the next video we're going to be having a look at how we can actually utilize these skills to produce a crate that we can then take and unwrap. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's a really brief just introduction to the Extrude. In the next video we'll be having a look at how we can model the crates themselves.